Thank you for inviting me here to speak today. Before I begin, I want you to know that what I'll be sharing with you is not backed by my academic credentials. I flunked my way through school. However, it is backed by myriad medical experiences. And what I'm going to say will only have value if it resonates with you. I'll be speaking about the human condition, the medical world, our quality of life, and how we can benefit from knowing and sharing our qualities of life with people we depend on. Then the book, Everybody Needs a Hippo. And finally, how you can help your physicians while they're helping you. There are two controlling commonalities in every human being, ego and fear. It's how we process these mental attributes that dictates how we live. There have been times when we have felt fearless, but those episodes are infrequent at best. And propaganda, persuasion, and control are dependent upon the fear quotient in each of us. None of us are immune. Our egos help us mask our fear with denial, anger, rage, etc. But each one of us is impacted. And the business sector of the medical world has used fear and hope to overplay the patient's ego and has projected the aura of godliness onto physicians. I believe this is one of the key factors in the massive burnout in medicine today. When we were diagnosed with cancer, the big C, our egos evaporated and fear ruled the day. And when we are dynamically fearful, our cognitive functioning freezes and we numb out. We tend to become children and willing to follow our trusted physicians' counsel at all costs. We're human, but so are our physicians. And it has long been hypothesized that physicians must follow certain agendas when dealing with patients. They may be doing the best they can, but if their hospital affiliation's board of directors decides that they must follow a certain protocol, then you can put your money on that protocol. The same applies to protocols demanded by the practice managing partner, insurance companies, as well as Medicare. Following up on this hypothesis, Stanford conducted a study several years ago of emergency room doctors across the country. Their findings show that over 90% of these doctors would not accept the same end-of-life care for themselves or their families that they routinely prescribe to their patients. They're human, and they're suffering the consequences with burnout. Like most of us, many medical professionals have learned to go along to get along. They fear losing their hospital affiliation, being censured, or subject to a peer review. And I'm not saying that medics are bad people. That would be an aim. I truly believe that the majority of all humans have goodness in their hearts. But I've worked with entrepreneurs, lawyers, dentists, doctors, law enforcement, politicians, teachers, etc., and know that I am safest when I'm able to think for myself, not blindly trust in others. However, I am also subject to fear. In 2005, I was diagnosed with prostate cancer with a Gleason 6. 3 different doctors gave me 2 years to live if I didn't immediately utilize their specialties, surgery, radiation, chemotherapy, respectively. Ordinarily, being human and with great fear, I would immediately have dropped to my knees and prayed to my doctors to save me. That's exactly what I had done when my firstborn son, Chad, an athletic 26-year-old, was diagnosed with stomach cancer just 1 year earlier. I dropped to my knees and prayed to my son's doctors to do everything possible to save my son. The doctors told me that Chad had 2 very large adenocarcinoma tumors in his esophagus and his stomach, and if we didn't immediately go to their recommended teaching hospital where a renowned surgeon would remove his stomach, he had less than 2 months to live. No second opinion, no oncologist, no palliative specialist, no intelligence, just fear, prayer, panic, and hope. This is Chad, 1 month before his surgery. My son Chad went into the hospital as a strong athlete, ready to duke it out and beat his cancer. He came out 2 weeks later, totally vanquished, and was never able to swallow again. Never. able to swallow again. So when my urologist told me that I had 2 years to live if I did not respect each of their medical disciplines, I respectfully told them that I needed to be with my son. I had no other special, medical interventions until my son passed at the end of 2006. Interestingly, my son's cause of death was attributed to malnutrition. Over the next year, I tried an aggressive and expensive supplement regimen, all to no avail. In 2007, 8, and 9, I had biopsies at Stanford, only to be told that no cancer or tumors were found in my prostate. When I asked how that could be, the chief of urology told me that it was just a sampling error, and I never could find out whether it was the original urologist or Stanford that made those errors. That first decade of this century began with a very personal and major embezzlement by my wife's assistant. Then Chad became sick, and then I was diagnosed, and it ended with a very ugly divorce in 2010. It had been a very stressful 10 years. Well, that stress led me into 2012 when I decided to be conscientious and have another biopsy at Stanford. This time, 2 tumors were found, and I was now diagnosed with a Gleason 8. Since my original diagnosis, 6 of my friends who had been diagnosed with a Gleason 6 or lesser, out of fear and hope, did exactly what their doctors prescribed. I have since buried 3 of them, 2 wear diapers, and 1 is simply impotent. And 16 years later from my original diagnosis, I am not impotent, incontinent, or dead. I'm far from suicidal, but I'm acutely aware that there are scarier things than death. I've become more proactive about living on my own terms and have followed the nutritional and exercise advice of a friend in palliative medicine. Although most prostate cancer research is laughable, I came across a book in 2010 which contained a study from, I believe, was the Mayo Clinic. And it stated that if a high-risk prostate cancer patient had any type of procedure, he had a 50% survival rate in 5 years. But if that same patient did nothing, there was a 95% survival rate in 10 years. Seemed pretty clear to me that I shouldn't get too worried, and I went for the better odds. And according to Medscape in 2021, urologists have the highest rate of burnout than any other medical discipline. They're human. Adam, my surviving son, who was an EMT, had spent 2 years attending to his big brother's care, and therefore witnessed the medical abuses that Chad had experienced. He also became aware how easy it had been to get FaceTime with a surgeon prior to surgery and almost impossible afterwards, as the nurses would tell us the surgeon was just so busy helping new patients. It wasn't personal, it was just business. During one of our many discussions about cancer, Adam remarked that it was his impression that most people were just too stressed out to be involved in their own medical decision-making, and they went to their doctors simply to get fixed. He asked me where my strength came from that I didn't blindly give my life over to the physicians. I told him I needed to respect myself and go with my gut, since my doctors had never asked me any non-medical questions about my personal life. I was simply just another man with prostate cancer. I knew I couldn't compete academically with them, but I surely knew more about me than they did. Adam thought about this and later suggested there may be an easy way to inform our doctors in a non-threatening way about what was important to us. Now, why should that make a difference? An average medical visit is 9 minutes. In that time, the physician greets, meets, diagnoses, and treats. The simple economics of this reality dictates the use of one-size-fits-all medicine, because there just isn't enough time for the physicians to know all their patients and to respect the patient's individual needs. If the doctor knew for certain which activities were important to us, she might then choose a different treatment plan that would respect who we are. This is Adam's quality of life chart. Adam's idea was to simply chart what is important in our lives and then share these with the physicians within the 9-minute prescribed visit, so they could tell us how their treatment plans will personally and uniquely affect us. This can lead to collaboration between physicians and patients, and many studies have shown that when patients and physicians are on the same side of the medical equation, the informed shared decision making promotes a greater post-treatment success. To communicate all this, Adam and I created Everybody Needs a Hippo, a little 36-page adult fairy tale in a Dr. Seuss Disney-esque style that takes the reader through the patient side of the medical experiences. It focuses in a clear and humorous way the importance of factoring in quality of life considerations when making treatment path decisions. And the Hippo can stand for the rare hippopotamus or the equally rare Hippocratic Oath. With comic relief, the reader learns how to obtain real answers to his or her unique medical condition, and then to be able to make better informed decisions. The book is a 20-minute read and is free to read on this website. The first person to use Adam's quality of life chart was Diane, a very successful theatrical director, a voice talent, and creator of Sonoma County's nationally acclaimed Teen Court. Diane's dentist found a tumor on her tongue, and so she filled out her quality of life, the QOL chart, and took it to her appointment with the chief of oral facial surgery at a major Northern California hospital. They reviewed her chart within minutes, and the doctor scheduled her for surgery the following Wednesday. Once there, he anesthetized her, and upon entering her mouth, immediately withdrew, realizing that anything that he did would destroy too much of Diane's quality of life. He woke her up and told her to have chemo and radiation. I had never heard of a surgeon stopping a surgery simply out of respect to the patient's quality of life. Now, we have found that many people confuse their quality of life with their financial assets, such as how big their home might be. Do you remember when I told you that Chad left the hospital and could not swallow for the remainder of his life? Well, not being able to swallow meant that he used an IV feeding system in order for him to receive nutritional needs. This in turn required him to keep his feeding ports sterile, and therefore could not expose his body to showering or bathing. He could no longer kiss, drive, make love, or walk around the block. With tubes connected to him, Chad could no longer do anything that had previously provided him joy. His decision to fight his cancer meant that he lost almost every bit of quality of life and lived with a death sentence for his last 2 years. So when you're filling out your quality of life charts, note that you may enjoy eating, seeing, loving, hearing, touching, walking, dancing, keyboarding, playing tennis, etc. Think about how you spend each day, including weekends, and what you do when you're on vacation. If you lost any of these simple traits that we often take for granted, your life will change dramatically. So write everything down. In example, I begin each morning at 6 with a mocha and my computer. I watch a TED Talk, then do emails, then I exercise and go for a walk. Upon my return, I make my lunch and work on my projects. These simple activities require the use of a variety of my senses and physical agility. If I were to lose any of these activities, my personality would compensate with some negative expressions such as irritability and/or depression. So be nice to yourselves. Ordinarily, a physician does not have the time to get to know you, and certainly cannot emotionally afford the cost of really knowing each patient in depth. With this chart, You can help your doctors learn all about you in minutes with no additional cost to you or them. And then they can truly include you in the prognosis. And the chart can be of use for any type of medical intervention whenever there is a choice between treatment plans. So helping your physicians respect you will also help them be human. And that's the best gift you can give them. Remember, we need our doctors, and they very much need us. I hope everybody needs a Hippo brightens up your day and your prognosis. Thank you for letting me share.